Good overall health for women requires good vaginal health. Good vaginal health requires your lube to be made of high-quality ingredients. This is applicable for all women using lube vaginally, but especially around the time of perimenopause when vaginal dryness becomes more common. Vaginal pH often starts to shift, the vaginal microbiome often changes, and risk of infections goes up. Most lubes can make all of those things worse, not to mention introducing toxins into your systemic circulation. It's time to become more discerning about your lube ingredients. Typical ones sold in grocery stores are not good enough for you. You're listening to the Health Courage Collective podcast, episode 253. It's time to use better lube. There's an exclusive group of high-performing women who thrive through perimenopause and beyond and successfully prevent or drastically delay all of the common diseases of aging so they're capable of living and giving more as they get older rather than less. The Health Courage Collective podcast is for you if you're ready to become one of them. I'm so happy you're here. Hey, welcome to today's episode. I'm so happy that you're listening today. I hope you've had a lovely week. How is your brain indigestion? Did you think of a way to slow down and curate the inputs into digestible portions that actually nourish your future? It's helpful. Today we're going to talk about lube. I had a couple of people ask me about this in the pharmacy recently, and it's a really good subject that's actually super important to your long-term overall health that you can get really smart about in just a short amount of time. Are you ready? Okay, so there are many ways to approach the selection of a lube. The traditional way is to consider water-based, oil-based, silicone-based, or hybrid, and then to pick the type of lube to match your desired use, like no oil-based lubes when using condoms, and some lubes work better for anal penetration, etc. All valid points. But my main concern for you today, and what I'm going to view everything through the lens of for this episode, is long-term health. Vaginal health, but vaginal health is whole body health, really, especially when you consider the dramatically increased risk for bacterial infections, yeast infections, discomfort and pain that typically come with menopause. Not to mention urinary tract infections and urinary incontinence. Traditional lubes don't affect those so much, but vaginal hormones do. We talked about those in episode 213. Every woman should be on this prescription. So, in order to promote your long-term health, the lube you pick needs to meet a certain set of criteria, and none of the lubes available at the grocery store, or sadly even at my pharmacy, which is pretty progressive and where I was answering questions for these people, meet these criteria. None of them. I'm sure you probably know the reasons to use lube with sex. It increases sensation, comfort, pleasure, and prevents damage like micro tears in the delicate vaginal tissue. Hopefully you don't see using lube as a failing of some kind or something that's only for people with problems. If so, that's a discussion for another day. I also hope you don't think that vaginal dryness and atrophy is a product of getting older that you just have to live with for the next 50 years. As your hormones decline, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, and DHEA, starting at midlife, the vaginal tissue gets more dry and atrophies or shrinks, unless you give them some of the hormones they're desperately crying out for. Whether you want to replace your systemic hormones in your whole body or not, you should provide your vaginal tissue with estrogen, plus or minus DHEA, pretty much without exception. Go back and listen to episode 213 for more on that. You probably know that the pH of a healthy vagina is acidic. It's actually around 3.5 to 4.5. That's pretty acidic. It's about the same pH as orange juice, sauerkraut, wine, and tomato juice. The low pH is a happy, healthy environment for the friendly lactobacillus bacteria that live there, and it helps keep pathogenic bacteria and yeasts from being able to grow. So, as you might guess, higher vaginal pH, meaning being more basic and less acidic, increases the chance of infection. It also causes a fishy odor. The presence of blood can increase the pH temporarily. Low estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, and DHEA increase vaginal pH and decrease populations of healthy bacteria. Enter increased vaginal infections, increased urinary tract infections, increased dryness, itching, burning, and pain with sex. The vaginal pH is very tightly correlated with the vaginal microbiome. You want both of them to stay in a healthy Goldilocks zone. Vaginal estrogen plus or minus DHEA is great for helping there. If you wanted to push a chemical of some kind into someone's systemic body circulation, what do you think would be the most efficient delivery method? Intravenous infusion? Yes, it would depend on the chemical a bit, but a vaginal dose would be one of the most efficient routes. Way better than oral administration. Often twice as much of the substance gets absorbed into the circulation, and also way better than just topically on your regular skin. The vagina is highly permeable because it's moisture rich, but the tissue is thin and delicate and has a really good blood supply. Absorption of drugs or poisons or whatever substance you put there is rapid, complete, and avoids toxin screening through the liver before the chemical gets into your bloodstream. And thus we have our criteria that must be met by a lube you intend to use vaginally before you even consider purchasing it. 1, it must not alter your acidic pH. 2, it must not disrupt your delicate microbiome balance. And 3, it must not contain anything that you don't want rapidly and efficiently absorbed into your systemic circulation. As a general rule, you want your lube to have no more than 4 to 6 ingredients. So read the ingredient list first. You don't want anything with chlorhexidine gluconate, which I never realized before was in some lubes. That's what's in Hibiclens, the antiseptic doctors use to scrub into surgery. And it's what's in Pyridex prescription mouthwash. It will for sure mess up your microbiome. You don't want the spermicide nonoxonol 9, which can damage vaginal tissue and get absorbed into your bloodstream. No propylene glycol, glycerin, parabens, fragrances, petroleum-based oils of any kind, or any type of sugar, which I also didn't realize was in lubes either because I'm pretty ignorant about the world, and apparently there are edible lubes that have sugar. That's way bad for your microbiome and miracle grow for yeast. Stay away. No quaternium 15, polyquaternium 15, benzocaine, or menthol. You don't want those things getting absorbed into your systemic circulation, and they're likely to alter your microbiome and or pH also. For silicone-based lubes, which last longer than water-based lubes, just check and make sure that their pH is okay and that they don't have any harmful ingredients. Same for oil-based lubes, plus make sure the oil is plant-based, not petroleum-based, and remember that you can't use them with condoms. For water-based lubes, which are most common, you have to take into consideration the pH, the harmful ingredients, and the osmolality. Osmolality has to do with how many particles are dissolved in a solution. If you use a lube vaginally that has a high osmolality, it will draw water out of the cells in your vaginal tissue because the concentration of dissolved particles in the lube is higher than the concentration of salts in solution inside of your cells. We don't want that. We don't want to pull water out of that tissue. And if you use a lube with too low of osmolality, it will draw too much water into your cells, which can swell and actually burst your cells. Weird. It will also burst sperm cells. Interesting. And hyperosmolar lubes will shrink sperm cells. Poor little guys. So you want a product with the same osmolality as in human cells. Something I'm intimately familiar with as a pharmacist at a compounding pharmacy is that any water-containing products we make have to have a beyond use state of no more than 14 days, unless we add a preservative. Whether it's a wart cream or an eardrop or your cat's grilled salmon flavored thyroid medication, if it has water, we legally have to tell you to keep it in the fridge and throw it away in 14 days, unless we add a preservative to it. So, water-based lubes will all have preservatives, unless you make it yourself. Water can cause the chemical composition of many drugs to degrade faster, and it creates a good breeding ground for molds, yeasts, and bacteria to start growing if the product is contaminated, which could happen just from opening the container and getting some out. So, you can't get away from a preservative, but sodium benzoate and potassium sorbate seem to be the best. Some preservatives to avoid are chlorhexidine that we already talked about, PAPB, which stands for polyaminopropylbiguanide, and anything that ends with paraben, methylparaben, polyparaben, butylparaben. Those are all bad. They can cause irritation, but much worse, will get mainlined to your systemic circulation and disrupt your hormones and rot your brain. Not really, but really. They disrupt your hormones so much that your brain function can get altered. It's looking like for generations, mom rodents exposed to parabens have children rodents with significantly more anxiety, attention problems, and obesity than even when the babies were never exposed themselves. Okay, so how are you feeling? Confident in your ability to pick a good lube? Maybe. At least confident in your understanding of why lube that meets our criteria is important for your long-term health. You remember the criteria, right? 1, won't raise your vaginal pH. 2, won't alter your microbiome. 3, is isosmotic if it's water-based. And 4, doesn't contain any harmful ingredients. I'll put a link in the show notes to some recommended brands, but I'm also going to put a link to Amanda Lauder's webpage for her podcast because she has some really helpful charts there comparing pH of a ton of different brands of lube and comparing osmolality of a ton of different brands of lube. So you can look on her webpage and check for your brand there. It's amandalauder.com/podcast/295. Okay, some acceptable brands of lube are Good Clean Love, Uber Lube, Wet Platinum, Eros, Aloe Cadabra, Coco New, Sutil, Waterslide, Yes, The Butters, Desert Harvest, Sliquid, and Slippery Stuff. I'll have links in the show notes with prices so you can consider your options. There's an OBGYN named Anna Kabeka who has developed her own lube called Velvet. She's an advocate for natural clean ingredients, so she developed her own lube that meets her high standards. It's aloe-based, and she says it supports healthy lactobacteria. Side note, she also has a vaginal moisturizer for daily use that has DHEA. If you listen to episode 213, you know why DHEA can be helpful for vaginal health when hormones decline at midlife. So that's a good non-prescription option that actually has the DHEA in it. If you're interested, it's called Julva. But Velvet is the lubricant. I clicked on it to see how much it costs, and it just says join the wait list. So I guess you can't actually buy it yet, but it looks like it's probably a good one. I hope this helps you level up your lube. It really does matter to your overall health. Grocery store lube just isn't up to your standards anymore. You don't want to be absorbing those chemicals into your bloodstream or messing up your microbiome, or shifting your vaginal pH into a range that puts you at increased risk for infections. Thank you so much for being here today. You are terrific. Next week, we're going to talk about things you didn't know about melatonin that are unique to women in their 40s and 50s. Until then, don't settle for a lube with low standards, and don't be normal. Pat yourself on the back for sticking with it till the end of this episode. I know your attention is valuable and I don't take it lightly. I'm so grateful that you care about not settling for anything less than world-class care and results. Strong women who feel good change the future. I'd appreciate it so much if you'd share this podcast with a friend so we can make elite-level perimenopausal outcomes the rule rather than the exception. This podcast is for entertainment and information purposes only. Statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Christina Hackett and producers, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse events caused by use of information contained herein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.